Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by thanking you all for being here. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys. Sawadee Krap. This is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students and I help them to learn the path to enlightenment based on the teachings of the Buddha. The path to enlightenment is where your mind has been trained to be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will be free of anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. And this is accomplished through training of the mind. So we start our classes with meditation, which is one of the aspects of the training that you would need to employ in order to train your mind to get to enlightenment. But there's other things that you would need as well on your journey to enlightenment. So this is why the Buddha taught many different topics in order to help you to learn and train and develop your mind. His teachings aren't based in belief, where you believe a bunch of things and then you hope something good happens when you die. They're not rules or commandments. There's not rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. If you've seen these things associated with Buddhist teachings, this isn't actually what the Buddha taught, although there's some people that associate those kinds of things with the Buddhist teachings, but that's not what he actually taught. So what I'm going to do today, which is a Wednesday, is I'm going to do meditation with you guys, guide you in that, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you would like to ask about the teachings of the Buddha. On Sundays in this particular program, what I do is meditation, and then I share teachings with you guys based on the text that we use for this course or this program, which is called Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is a Volume 1 of this book series over there on the bookshelf. And you can acquire this book series through downloading it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can order it on Amazon if you'd like. So again, I'd like to welcome all of you guys here at the temple, and welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I'm going to start this is I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into meditation. If you would like to chant along or just even see these chants that I actually am going to be chanting, they're over on the table over there. There's a laminated sheet that has the chants, and you're welcome to get one if you like. It has the Pali language on there, and it has go ahead. It has the English translations on there as well. Chanting was used during the lifetime of the Buddha as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So there's nothing mystical or magical here. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. Instead, the chanting was used during the lifetime of the Buddha because he taught everything orally. And when he was teaching orally, people needed to remember the teachings. So they would commit them to their memory by reciting them word for word for word. For those of you guys that are online, you can acquire this same one-page chanting sheet by going to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com. Click on free books, and down towards the bottom, you'll see the daily chants, and you'll be able to see what I'm referencing. If you read the English translations, you see a lot of admiration and gratitude and respect for the Buddha here. And because of that, I suspect that his students probably created these chants, either during his life or after his death. These chants most likely weren't even created by the Buddha, because a Buddha doesn't walk around with arrogance and ego and kind of demanding for people to chant these things to him out of admiration and respect. But if you learn from a teacher of how to move from the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind, you'd probably have a lot of respect and admiration for that person too, because the Buddha didn't want anything from his students. He didn't expect anything from his students. He was just there with loving kindness and compassion, helping people to understand how to train their mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So if you learn from a teacher that didn't want anything from you or expect anything and help you to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So I suspect that his students created these either during his life or after his death. So first I'll chant, and you guys are welcome to chant along with me. Then I'm going to guide you in some meditation just for a brief period, but then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting as well. When we're in that quiet period, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds here or there. There might be a dog barking or a car going by or things like this, but these things are all impermanent. You can just train your mind to not be affected by them, because you can't ever be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence. So actually, when you hear these different sounds and things like this is a good challenge for your mind to exercise your mind and train it to not be affected by what's going on outside. So then after we do the period of time where we're meditating, and we'll come out with some more chanting as well. And then for the body position, there's 4 positions that students are oftentimes meditating in, because the Buddha taught 4 different positions. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. And depending on what courses and programs you learn with me, you'll be able to learn all 4 of these. But oftentimes when people are first getting started, they're learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position, which you guys are all pretty much in the seated position, and maybe those of you at home are in the seated position too, but just know that there are other positions as well. If you're sitting on the floor, you might have a cushion under your rear. This helps to soften the seat and give you guys a nice comfortable place to sit. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which gets their hips up in the air, because you'd like your legs to just be lightly crossed if you're on the floor, not real tight. And if you put your legs off the mat, which some people like to do, it's up to you how you sit. There's not just one way to actually sit, but some people like to put their legs off the mat because it gets your hips up in the air and lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And again, this isn't about everyone doing it exactly the same way, but if this is comfortable for you, you could use it. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because that's not possible, because everybody's body is a bit different and you're going to find different things to be comfortable. So find whatever's comfortable with your lower body and the hands and arms. And the same thing for those of you guys that are maybe sitting in a chair or a sofa or a bench or in a wheelchair or anything like this. No matter what you're sitting on, just make the lower body and the hands and arms comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train the mind. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it keeps the mind attentive and alert. You're able to actively train the mind during the meditation. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join along, and then I'll come back in with some guidance for the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Potang Mahakewanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakewata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะขวาพุทธังมะขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะเตOkay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Thank you guys for deciding to hang out and that today's a day you'd like to meditate and learn some teachings of the Buddha. For those of you guys that are here for the first time at the temple, I'd like to let you know that there's a bathroom in the very last door in the back of the room. If you'd like to use the restroom at any time, feel free to help yourself. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you look at the signs outside in the parking lot, it'll take you around to the main bathrooms for the temple that you're welcome to use at any time if you'd like. We even have water and snacks and juice here that has been provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to at any time. So feel free to make yourself comfortable and rest and relax and learn anything it is that you'd like to learn. Because today's class, what I'm going to do is just give you guys a little taste of the teachings of the Buddha, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have. Where typically on other days where I'm teaching courses and retreats, and even on Sundays and Saturdays, I'm teaching more in depth of what the Buddha taught. But on Wednesdays, I leave it as a day for meditation and then just open up to any and all questions that students have. So as you guys have questions, whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you'll be able to ask all your questions. For those of you guys here at the temple, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. All you need to do is come get a microphone and press the gray button on the front. There's some lights that will light up, and just wait a second or so and hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll also be able to hear you online online as well. If you weren't speaking with the microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online. And then for those of you guys that are online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask your questions by putting that into the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like by just opening up your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you on the live stream as well. So just to give you guys a little bit of a taste of the teachings of the Buddha and what they're about, so that perhaps it'll give you a frame of reference to start asking questions, or maybe you've seen things in your past, either reading books or things on TV or things as you've been traveling here in Thailand or other parts of the world. You might have questions about the teachings of the Buddha, and I'm here to help you with those. The teachings of the Buddha, they're to help you awaken to this enlightened mental state. Awakening to enlightenment means that you're cultivating wisdom, that you're training your mind, that you're eradicating certain pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered that are causing the mind to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings are typically associated with somebody else causing this for you. This is what the unenlightened mind has when it has a lack of wisdom. It thinks that these feelings are being caused by something external. You might think that your boss is making you angry, or that your life partner is frustrating you, or that your parents or your siblings are annoying you, or something like this. But in reality, what you come to understand through learning the teachings of the Buddha, reflecting on them to independently verify them and practice them, is that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. And because of that, you can actually eliminate those causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. If it was everybody else that was causing these feelings in your own mind, then you wouldn't ever be able to eliminate them, because it's something that somebody else is actually doing. And you might find yourself in a situation where when somebody does something that you disagree with and you're getting angry and frustrated and agitated, you might push these people aside, thinking that this is going to solve your problem. Those painful feelings that you're experiencing, the mind with its lack of wisdom, it's going to think that the way to solve it is to push people away out of your life. And if you've done this before, which a lot of people do, you've seen that it doesn't solve your problem, because you still get agitated, you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. Or the other thing you might do is you might become bitter and hostile and harsh when you're talking with people. Through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, it's almost like an animal growling and roaring and showing its teeth and trying to fear this person into doing things your way. And this is a typical thing that the unenlightened mind will do with a lack of wisdom. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people and try to control people or force people to do things your way. And as long as you're doing this, this is just coming from a lack of wisdom, that there's less and less and less and less people that you're going to be able to spend time with in your life. Because as your expectations grow, as your wants and your longing, your yearning, and the things that you want other people to do grow, there's less and less people that can fulfill that all the time, because it's not possible for everybody to do things your way. But in the unenlightened state, what the mind will have is it will have this desire, this craving for everyone to do things your way. But it's not possible for everyone in the world to do things your way. So therefore, whenever you see something that you disagree with, you might get angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. The mind is craving for people to do things a particular way permanently. And this just isn't possible, because you live in an impermanent world. So the mind has these 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. And you don't need to feel guilty or shameful about this, because every person that's ever been born, every being that's ever been born, has had these same exact 10 pollutions in the mind. We refer to these as the 10 fetters, or the taints, or the defilements, or pollutions. They're called a fetter because during ancient times, in order to keep a prisoner trapped in a certain area, they would attach a shackle around your ankle with a chain and a ball. This was referred to as a fetter, and it would keep you trapped in a certain area. Where today we put prisoners in a jail cell, but back in ancient times, it was just kind of an open field. People would have this fetter on their ankle, and they weren't able to leave that particular area. They were trapped in that particular area. So these 10 fetters are keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, where you keep experiencing the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings over and over and over again. But there is a solution to this. There's an escape to this. And that is the teachings of the Buddha, that as you're learning them, you investigate them, you examine them, You then reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And as you're being guided in the teachings, you can independently verify that they're true. And then you can practice his teachings, integrating his teachings into your life. And that's where you'll see the improvement. You'll see that the mind's becoming more peaceful, more joyful. You'll see that there's calmness and serenity and contentedness in the mind. You'll see there's focus and concentration and clarity and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships will blossom and they will be at ease because you're not being bitter and hostile and harsh in your relationships any longer. You'll notice that you'll get to a point that you're not even in a bad mood anymore because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing the bad mood to be occurring in the mind. But you wouldn't be able to do that without the wisdom of how to do that. And that's where the teachings of the Buddha come in. And the teacher is kind of like a tour guide. We're helping you to understand what it is that you need to learn and practice. But a student is on their own independent journey to enlightenment. You're needing teachers and guides to help you along the way, but you're doing the work to be able to learn and grow and develop. And one of the things that I've done is I've made all these resources available for you at no cost so that you can easily get access to the books, to the videos, the podcasts, audiobooks, courses, classes, retreats. You can even get personal guidance at no cost where you can gradually learn and grow and develop, essentially evolving into a better and better human being so that you don't need to function with this anger and sadness and frustration any longer because you can evolve. It's like a species evolving. You can evolve to a higher consciousness where your mind's no longer experiencing these discontent feelings. But an individual would need to decide that they're done with the sadness. They're done with the anger. They're done with the broken relationships. They're done with the heartache and the misery and the sorrow and the grief and the pain and the displeasure of life. And when somebody decides that they're done with that and they would like to move to this higher consciousness, this mental state that you can acquire in this lifetime, which is referred to as enlightenment, then there's help and guidance for you to be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to believe your way to this enlightened mental state. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about belief. So you shouldn't believe anything that I say. You shouldn't believe anything that anybody else says. You shouldn't believe anything that you see written in the books that I share. The belief isn't going to help you to get to wisdom because with belief, you don't know what's true and you don't know what's false. You're just believing it because either you convinced yourself to believe it or somebody else has convinced you to believe this particular thing. And now your mind, it can be shaken up because you don't necessarily know the truth. But when you get to wisdom and you know the truth, you can't be shaken off of that because you know with 100% certainty that this is the truth. So the Buddha didn't teach a bunch of beliefs. He didn't teach rules or commandments that everybody needs to follow. And if everybody follows these rules and commandments, the world will become a peaceful place. He didn't teach you the way the world should be. He taught you the way the world is. And he's describing to you the way the natural world is around you. He's describing to you the way the world is. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, when you lack wisdom of this natural world, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties. That's why the mind is experiencing the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings because the mind is struggling, because it lives in a world that it doesn't understand. So the Buddha is describing to you what's referred to as the natural laws of existence, that you can understand these natural laws. You can learn them, you can investigate them, you can examine them, you can reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you can practice them and see the truth for yourself. And as you gain this wisdom, you can make wiser and wiser choices that lead to wholesome results, or we refer to this as wholesome karma. You might have heard the word karma being used. This is from another language called Sanskrit. The language of the original teachings of the Buddha is the Pali Canon. It's the Pali language, and people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use the Pali words, but if it's translated to just one English word, I would just use that word. The word karma means cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's not anything to believe in. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. There's no being that's overseeing this natural law and ensuring who gets punished and who gets rewarded. That's not what the natural law of karma is. What it is it's a sequence of events. There are certain events that occur that produce a certain outcome or a certain result. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So when you're experiencing certain unwholesome things in your life, what the unenlightened mind does with the lack of wisdom of this natural law is it'll tend to blame other people for the things that you experience in your life. And if you keep blaming other people for what you experience, you never get the opportunity to cultivate wisdom of this natural law and make different decisions that produce different results. So if you see the same things occurring in your life over and over and over and over again, this is an indication to you that you haven't cultivated the wisdom that you need to overcome that situation. And you're making the same decisions that's leading to the same result. So the teachings of the Buddha are here to help you cultivate wisdom so that now you can make improved decisions, make wise decisions, and experience wholesome results. And one of the wise decisions that you make is training your own mind. So these natural laws of existence is something that you're awakening to, and you're gaining wisdom of them. And the same thing that you need to do here is the same thing you've done when you were growing up. When you were growing up, you didn't understand the natural law of gravity. And because of that, you struggled. You had difficulties. We all did. We fell down. We hit our head. We busted our knees, our elbow, our head. We broke our toys. We broke other people's stuff. We knocked over glasses of water. We had all kinds of difficulties with this natural law of gravity because we made unwise choices. Because with the lack of wisdom of a natural law, you're going to make unwise choices, and it's going to lead to unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And as we did, we started making improved decisions. And as we started making improved decisions, wiser decisions, we experienced wholesome results. Now we're at the point where we might tie our shoes a little bit tighter. We might look at the surface of the street in the sidewalk when we're walking. We're a bit calmer when we walk. We're not so giddy and excited and bouncing around like we were when we were a child. And because of that, we don't fall down and hurt ourselves. We can climb a ladder. We can ride a bicycle. We can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke to this natural law of gravity, and we fully understand it so we can make wise decisions about this natural law of gravity. So by the time we were 10, 12, 14 years old, we had fully awoke to this natural law of gravity because it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that leads to awakening to a natural law. So the same thing needs to occur with these natural laws that the Buddha taught. Enlightenment is not instantaneous. Sometimes people think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. If you study the original teachings of the Buddha, he shares with you how it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that it took for him to get to this enlightened mental state. So what he did during his life is he explained to you what it took for him to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, and he shared that with anybody who was interested and had a sincere interest in learning and practicing the teachings. He didn't go out into the world and force people or control people or expect people to learn his teachings. He just made himself available for anybody who was interested in learning and practicing to be able to experience the same mental state that he experienced by learning and practicing, investigating these teachings, and gradually training the mind to awaken to the wisdom so that now you can live in a world that you understand and you won't have struggles and difficulties because your mind will be awoken to the natural laws. So essentially what the Buddha's teachings are is it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never ever need to hurt ever again. It's one of the best self-help programs that you'll ever encounter because it's been around for 2,500 years and it's well vetted and described and there's people who understand it. So again, it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what hurts you isn't the outside world. What's hurting you is inside one's own mind. And when you learn this and you understand it, you reflect on it and you practice it, you'll see the truth. Because there's situations right now where you're angry and you're sad and you're frustrated, and you know that to be the case. And when you're training your mind in these teachings and you experience those same situations and you're no longer angry, you're no longer frustrated, you're no longer experiencing those feelings, you'll know that it's from these teachings that have guided you to that mental state. Where if you'd like to learn and grow and develop and understand these teachings, you're able to do that. And as you do so and you implement them into your life and you're uprooting these pollutions, the mind's becoming more peaceful and joyful, more concentrated, more focused. You see your relationships gradually improving. But it's up to each individual to decide that they would like to learn and practice the teachings to be able to heal from what hurt them so that you don't ever hurt again. again. So the teachings of the Buddha are going to help you to be able to see what's hurting you so that you can eliminate that out of the mind. And as you're uprooting that with the tools and techniques that he shares, you'll see the improvement to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. So this is just a little bit of a taste of the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to dive into any of these topics or anything that you guys have been exposed to, if you'd like to talk about that, I'm here to help you. Again, for those of you here at the temple, if you could use the microphones, and those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So is there any questions here, anything online you guys would like to ask? No questions? Oh, you have a question, Steve? Sure.
Thank you, David. So in the early stages of starting this process, the way to describe enlightenment is wonderful, free of all these negative things. But then, in some of the other classes, you also describe the work that needs to be done to achieve that. And, I find myself falling short of that. This is going on and off the microphone. Giving up craving, desire, and attachment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you think, well, maybe I'll give up that one next week or tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's a battle there, or you find yourself at 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. I think you get another mic, yeah. That one's having some issues.
It's 10 o'clock at night and I've spent, a few hours on YouTube and I'm going to go to bed. And I thought, oh, that's right, I was going to meditate this evening. And I find, getting into this thing of either beating myself up, for falling short of this and thinking, oh, this is too hard. I'm sure for other people can achieve enlightenment, but, maybe it's not for me. Or do you just sort of like accept, well, this is where I am at the moment. I still have these fetters, as you call them, and try and do better tomorrow. Just navigating those early stages of the journey, I guess.
Sure. So with that example, let's talk about the problem, and then I'll talk about the solution of how to fix it. So what's going on here is that the mind has a certain amount of complacency in the unenlightened state. It's complacent. It lacks motivation, it lacks enthusiasm, it lacks initiative and a willingness to do something. It wants to be dull and lethargic and stay in this darkness, in this unenlightened state. It doesn't really want to do this work. It's not interested in doing this work. So you need to arise what we call the enlightenment factor of energy, where you have motivation, you have encouragement, you have enthusiasm. And you do that through investigating the teachings of the Buddha. This is one of the enlightenment factors that you learned last week, I think, when we talked about that. So you practice the enlightenment factor of investigation, where you're investigating and examining the teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify them. And as you are, this energy starts to spring up because you're learning the true, real teachings, and you can see the truth for yourself, that the teachings are actually true through independent verification of them. And the more you practice them and you get rid of these pollutions, then there's more and more joy. This investigation energy, it leads to this joy, this unconditioned happiness or gladness in the mind, where it's not based on any condition. So complacency is the big problem here. But then the other issue, which can potentially be there and potentially might be there, is doubt. That the mind has a certain amount of doubt that, did the Buddha really live? Is this individual real? Do his teachings truly lead to enlightenment? Can this community of people really be supportive and encouraging and help me? Can this teacher truly help you to get to enlightenment? Do you even have the ability to get to enlightenment? These are the 5 things that the mind typically has doubt about. Doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, the teacher that you're studying with. You might have doubt about that person and whether they can actually lead you to enlightenment, or doubt about your own ability to attain enlightenment. And the way that you eliminate doubt is also through investigation of the teachings. Not every issue that you encounter, the solution is investigation of the teachings, but these two particular ones, doubt and complacency, the way that you eradicate that is through investigating the teachings. Because as I was getting on the path to enlightenment, I had doubt about the teachings of the Buddha, and I also had complacency too. And what you can do is you can harness the mind through making it an inquisitive mind. So when doubt is in the mind, it will hinder you from going forward to learn and practice. But you don't eliminate doubt through belief. You don't eliminate doubt through faith or anything like this. You eliminate doubt in the teachings by studying them, by investigating them and examining them. As you roll up your sleeves and you sink your teeth into these teachings, more and more you'll see that they're true. So if you investigate the teachings, you examine them, you'll be able to see that they're true through your reflections. And then when you're practicing them, integrating them into your life, and as the pollutions are coming down and you see the peace and the joy going up, you'll know that these teachings are leading you towards an improved way of life. So when you have those missteps in your life, what this is the mind craving, desiring, having that sensual desire, right? Where the mind is longing, yearning, having craving, wanting things to be a certain way. And the mind wants it right now. Right? You hear about this peace, you hear about this joy of the enlightened mind, and oftentimes the mind feels guilty or shameful that you've maybe spoken in an unwise way, or maybe you had a certain bodily action that was unwise. And what you need to remember is that you're a work in progress, that you can't get to enlightenment in one day, 1 week, 1 month, or even 1 year. The Buddha took 6 years to get to enlightenment. So it's going to take you some time to get to enlightenment. So you need to just gradually, steadily, and consistently move towards improvement in your life. And sometimes it'll be challenging. And that's when you reach out to your teacher, you reach out to other community members, and you talk about your challenges of what you're experiencing, and then we help you. So where you're noticing the guilt and shame come in, which I also had those things too, is you just remind yourself, like, hey, you're a work in progress. The benefit is that whatever you did, whatever you were doing that you realized was a misstep, that's an improvement. Because maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or however many years ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, you didn't even have the wisdom to know that that was unwise. But now with your wisdom about the path to enlightenment, because you've been studying for a number of months now, with more wisdom, you're realizing, oh my goodness, I'm messing up this, I'm messing up that, I'm messing up this, I'm not doing this wisely. So you're in a better place because at least now you have the wisdom to know those things are unwise. Because in the past, you were just going through life, as I described from my life, just burning up the forest, right? Like knocking down the trees, burning up the forest, no wisdom whatsoever necessarily, and just making all kinds of unwise decisions, experiencing unwholesome results. Maybe we blamed other people for the things that we were experiencing, and we were just deep into the darkness. Where now, when you start to become a bit more awake, you start having more wisdom, but you also start seeing more of your mistakes, more of your missteps. But that's where you just remind yourself, hey, this is improvement. At least I realize that this is a misstep, and now I can do something about it and I can improve it. Where before, when you lacked the wisdom that it was a misstep, you couldn't actually improve it because you didn't even have the wisdom that it was unwise. So the guilt or the shame that you're experiencing, this is discontentedness based on the craving to perhaps be perfect, or the craving to be a certain way today, and just realize that you're not there. You're a work in progress, you're evolving, and you can give yourself time and take patience to be able to do that. And that's okay. Yeah, just remember the Buddha took 6 years, so he was making missteps too. All the way up to the 3rd stage of enlightenment, you're still going to be having missteps. They're not going to be significant as they were earlier in your development of your practice, but your mind is not purified even in the 3rd stage of enlightenment. Even though you'll go 3 months, 6 months without any discontentedness, you're still going to even have missteps there in the 3rd stage of enlightenment. And you're not there yet. It's not until the mind's enlightened that everything in your life will be completely peaceful and joyful. You won't be making any missteps whatsoever. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions you guys have here or online? Yes, ma'am. You guys can ask questions about, like Steve did, about your personal life, if you like, certain things that you're challenged with. If you've never studied the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever and you have questions about that, you can ask those questions. So any and all questions that you like. And as you get a microphone, you can keep it with you because someone close to you might have a question or you might have a follow-up question as well.
Actually, I have a series of questions. So firstly, you talk about the truth of the world. Is it like there has a one truth that everyone follows, or everyone will find their own truth during the way of practice?
In terms of the teachings of the Buddha and the path to enlightenment, there's just one truth. And it's not that you're following this truth, it's that you can awaken to the wisdom of this truth to be able to see it for yourself. Because what he does is he describes the natural laws and he helps you to be able to see these natural laws. Like, for example, there's something called the universal truth of impermanence. This is the very first teaching that you learn, that everything around you is constantly changing, right? And this is very crucial for you to understand. Well, when you learn that everything is constantly changing and there's this universal truth of impermanence, of things arising, changing, and fading away, this is a universal truth, but you can independently verify it. You can look around the world and you can see that, yeah, there is nothing around me that is permanent. All these things are constantly changing. And the reason why this is so important to learn is because your mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. You want things to be permanent. You want your relationships to be permanent. And when you guys separate, you get angry, you get frustrated because the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent. Or your bank account. You're looking at your bank account and you see a certain balance and you want that to be permanent. And then when it goes down, you get sad or you get frustrated. Or if your grandmother, your grandfather die or someone passes away, you grieve and you have sorrow. It's not because of love that this is occurring. It's because the mind's craving permanence, wanting grandma and grandpa or mom or dad or brothers and sisters to be permanent, when in reality they are impermanent. They arise, they change, and they fade away, just like everything else in the world. Or you might look at the weather, and you might want the weather to be permanent. When it's sunny outside, you might get so happy and so excited. But then when it's raining, you might get sad or frustrated or irritated. This is because the mind's craving permanence. So one of the things that the mind lacks wisdom about in the unenlightened state is that this world is impermanent, and it keeps craving this permanence over and over, like craving perfection, craving things to be a certain way. And as long as your mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence, you'll keep struggling in the world. So there is just one truth that the Buddha describes these natural laws. And when you understand that truth, then you'll be able to awaken to that wisdom and you'll be able to navigate the world. And you'll ultimately get to what's referred to as final knowledge. What final knowledge is where you fully understand the path to enlightenment and your mind's fully awakened to this wisdom. And now you don't experience any discontentedness whatsoever. You'll notice that it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. So there's not like your truth and my truth and everybody's truth. This is what some people talk about in the world. So I know that where that question's coming from, but there's no such thing as that because there's just the truth. And the way that you know that you've acquired the truth is that it's independently verifiable, right? That somebody who's speaking and sharing teachings with you, you should be able to independently verify that that teaching is true. So the teachings of the Buddha are that way, that I can explain them to you, and then, or you can read them in the books I share, or you can read on the, as I'm teaching classes, I have visual aids and stuff like that. You can independently verify what I share with you is the truth based on your own direct experience. And that's how you know you've acquired wisdom and you've gotten to the truth.
So it's like law of mathematics or physics is a hardcore truth. And as long as I find out like everything is impermanent and I learn the truth, then I can, when changes happen, I can see them peacefully without like getting emotional, right?
Yeah, as long as your mind is craving permanence, where you have craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wants, expectations, where the mind chases after things, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction, you'll form what's called conditioned feelings. A conditioned feeling is where you're basing your inner feeling on some condition. So for example, if it's sunny outside, you'll be happy, you'll be excited, you'll be elated. But because that's a conditioned feeling, it's based on some condition like the sun, and the sun is impermanent. that means your feeling of happiness is impermanent too. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind's basing its inner feelings on some condition. If it's not the sun, it's your bank account. If it's not the bank account, it's your job. If it's not your job, it's what your parents are doing. There's some condition that your mind is forming these pleasant feelings on. And these feelings of happiness, excitement, elation, they're arising, they're changing, and they're fading away. As long as you allow your mind to form a conditioned feeling on some condition, you get happy. Since that condition is not permanent, when that condition changes, your mind's going to move to the painful feelings, the anger, the sadness, the frustration. And you can independently verify this. You can look at your own life. Look at a recent time when you've been angry, when you've been frustrated, when you've been agitated, when you've been annoyed. You can see that your mind was wanting something. If you would have just got what you wanted, your mind was craving that permanence. And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But since you didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or sad or frustrated. And if you are having trouble independently verifying that, raise your hand, get a mic, or ask online. You can share with me, because I've had students say, hold on a second, David. I went to work the other day and I came home and my house was a wreck. My wife had a craft project all over the house. And when I came home, I got frustrated. How did I cause my own discontentedness? Because that's what I'm sharing with you, is that your mind is causing your own discontentedness. They're like, how did I cause my own frustration? I wasn't even there. I walked in and everything was all over the house. And I was like, well, you had a craving. You wanted your house to look a certain way. And when you went to work, it looked that way. And when you came home, your mind was expecting that. Your mind was longing, yearning. You were wanting that. You were craving that. And it's not possible for your house to look this way permanently. It's just not possible. And just like you can't look that way permanently, the way that your wife has her craft project all over the house, that's not permanent either. She's going to put it away. Right? Or either you can even help her to put it away. But if your mind's craving for the house to look a particular way permanently, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated. So this is a good example, because I came in behind schedule today, right? I was here like 9:10, 9:15. If you were sitting here frustrated or agitated or annoyed, that was your mind causing that. I didn't cause that. Right? I just experienced some impermanence, right? The impermanence was that it was raining, there was traffic, a drive that normally takes 20 minutes took me 1 hour and 25 minutes to get here. Out of 6 years of teaching at this temple, this is the first time I've ever came behind schedule like this, right? But this is just impermanence. Your mind might have been craving for the class to start at 9 o'clock, but it's just not possible for the class to always start at 9 o'clock. It's just not possible. Just like your flight. If your flight was delayed when you got to the airport or it was canceled, you were probably angry. You were frustrated. It's not possible for every plane to take off on time. There's going to be a maintenance issue. There's going to be a crew issue. There's going to be a weather issue. There's going to be a scheduling issue. There's going to be a runway issue. There's going to be some problem that occurs. And all it is its impermanence. That's all it is. But if your mind craves permanence, that I want every plane to take off on time, then you'll be frustrated and agitated as you're waiting for your plane to depart. So you can actually liberate your mind from these strong feelings by training it to not have craving, desire, attachment. And this is what we're doing in that meditation. The meditation that we just did, where you're focused on your breath and your mind's moving off the breath and you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing your mind back to the breath. The goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. That's not the actual goal. Sometimes people think that's the goal because we're training that when the mind moves off the breath, to let that go and come back. But the goal is to train your mind to let go. Because when you're in daily life and you're seeing something that your mind's craving, that is wanting to be permanent, you can train your mind to let it go. Right? Like, okay, my flight's going to be late. No big deal. This is just impermanence. I'll sit here for an hour. I'll sit here for 3 hours. Or maybe the flight's canceled. I need to go home and come back tomorrow and fly tomorrow. This is okay. It's just all impermanence. But if our mind craves permanence, we're going to be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. So with the breathing mindfulness meditation, you can train your mind to let go, let go, let go. So in the unenlightened state, when you're meditating, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. You'll have lots of thoughts, and you'll find it really hard to let them go. Or you might indulge in a thought, and you might follow that for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and you realize, Oh yeah, that's right. I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath. So if these things happen for you, you're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind's untrained. This is what an untrained mind does. Even in the enlightened mind, when your mind is enlightened, you're still going to have thoughts during meditation. But the difference is that you'll have a thought, you'll notice it right away, and you'll be able to easily cut it off, let it go, and come back to the breath. And there'll be these long periods of time where there's quietness and stillness in the mind, but you'll still have thoughts, even in the enlightened mental state. So you're training your mind to let go. So it's not craving, it's not desiring, it's not longing, it's not yearning. That's one side. But then the other side that the mind will sometimes live on is this indifference, this lack of motivation, where it just doesn't care, right? It just dull and lethargic. These are the two opposite sides of the spectrum. One is you're chasing after things, wanting them to be a certain way. The other side is, I don't care. I'm just going to be dull and lethargic and sit here and do nothing. So what the Buddha is teaching is this middle way, where you can come to the middle and you can pursue things as a goal, as an objective, or as an interest, and gradually work towards a particular objective. And this is what your mind can be trained to do. Because if you chase after something, you can only be happy when you get it. And when you don't get it, you'll be sad and frustrated. And over here, where you're dull and lethargic, you're not going to be able to make wise decisions to be able to move your life forward. So you need to be able to come to the middle, which is very challenging for the mind to be able to do until it's trained otherwise. But you can come to the middle where you gradually work towards a certain goal, a certain objective, or a certain interest. And now, having done so, you'll be able to make wise decisions that's producing wholesome results in your life, or wholesome karma.
Can I ask another?
Yeah, ask as many as you like.
I want to ask about mental illness, because the doctor will tell you it's a chemical reaction in your brain. Mm-hmm. So I experienced sometimes, I have bipolar, and when it was in depression, I don't really feel sad, but tears just come out. I know that emotion doesn't belong. I didn't experience the emotion. I didn't experience that. Actually, I was pretty happy that day and achieved a lot of things. But tears just come out, and my brain feels sad. Yeah. So I can tell the difference. It doesn't belong to me, but I can't get it away.
Sure. So this is one of the misunderstandings in the world, is that people think that mental illness is caused by a defective brain or brain chemistry and things like this. In reality, it's from the mind. It's the mind having craving, desire, attachment, this pollution that's in the mind. So the brain and the mind are two different things. The brain is the physical organ, and then the mind is non-physical. It's not tangible. And these things are connected, but they're two completely separate things. So what's happening in modern psychology is they're tweaking brain chemistry, trying to affect the mind, but the mind never gets cleaned up in that situation. And that's why no matter how much medication that you use, the mind never gets fully cured, because they're just tweaking brain chemistry. So I was also diagnosed with various mental illnesses growing up, and I've eliminated all that stuff, and my mind is completely peaceful, completely joyful. I took medications for about 24 years, in and out of hospitals and things like this. Bipolar was one of the things that I was diagnosed with. But you can train your mind to uproot the pollutions. And as you uproot that out of your mind, then it affects the brain chemistry in a positive way. There's actually physical changes that are happening to the brain as you're training the mind. So if you would like help to do that, I can help you, because one of the chapters in this first book is all about mental illness. And I explain about how people are misunderstanding mental illness today. Things like anorexia or bulimia, right? People will call this a mental illness. And what this is someone's mind's craving to look a certain way. And when they don't look that way, their mind is going to these unskillful actions to be able to try to look this particular way. Or depression. This is just sadness in the mind, this deep sadness in the mind that is being caused by craving, desire, attachment, this longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way. The mind is holding on to something, and you can train your mind to let this go. But like you said, when you were having those feelings, it was hard for your mind to let it go because it hasn't been trained to let go. It's not discipline. So that's where the breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to train your mind to let go. But there's a whole path. It's not just meditation that you need to learn. It's a whole path that you gradually learn, you gradually practice. And I have courses and retreats that you can attend here. You can attend online because I live stream them. They're all recorded. So even if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings and you'll be able to get the help that you need if you would like to get that help. Mm-hmm. More questions? You can ask more. Go ahead. Yeah.
So that the mental problem is one thing. And also, I want to ask about attention deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't get focused. Do you think it's also just a normal day medical saying it is not true? It's just people brain works different way, right?
The symptoms are real. What people are experiencing that are being labeled as bipolar, and the symptoms that people are experiencing in ADHD or ADD, things like this, the anguish and the mental challenges that people are experiencing, they're real 100%. But the cause is not being understood. The cause isn't the brain chemistry. The cause is the pollution in the mind. And when you clean up the pollution of the mind and you eradicate that, that's where the concentration and the focus comes in. But when you have this pollution in your mind, you'll find it difficult to function with concentration and focus and clarity. And because the mind is polluted, it is affecting the brain chemistry, and the brain chemistry is being thrown off. And this is why doctors are typically trying to tweak the brain chemistry, but they're not understanding the mind, which is this non-physical, intangible thing. So when you clean that up, that's where you'll see the focus and the concentration and the clarity. You'll see the discipline where the mind can be controlled, where in the unenlightened state, when your mind's polluted, you don't have control over the mind. And that's why you find it very difficult to let things go.
But I don't think ADHD is a bad thing, because we tend to be more creative, and we can think outside of the box and a lot of things. So you mean I can both be creative and keep the good side, and also be able to be focused?
Exactly. Yeah, what I'm talking about with ADHD or ADD, this is the lack of concentration, the lack of focus. That kind of stuff you can clear up by eliminating the pollution of the mind. But if you have creativity, if you have these kinds of things, that'll be retained as part of cleaning up the mind. The mind will actually be very creative as part of cleaning up the mind, because when your mind is polluted, your thoughts are going to be polluted too. You're going to have unwholesome thoughts. But when you clean up your mind and you eliminate the pollution, you'll notice that the creativity and all those things start to come through in the mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, we have a question online here from Rachel. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, David and everybody. I have a question on meditation posture. Because in my daily life, I do not walk or sit with a perfectly upright position. Just now, I did the meditation in sitting with my upper body almost perfectly upright, but I find it a little bit tiring. Because usually I sit in a natural, relaxed, and a little bit slouched position. It's kind of like leaning backwards, but just now I did it by leaning forward, but it took me some strength to keep my body perfectly upright. It's a bit tiring. So my question is, should I train my body to be perfectly upright when I'm doing the meditation? That's the first question. And then the second, or should I just stay in my a natural, relaxed, and slightly slouched position? Another question is, should I gradually train my mind or train my body in daily life to try to develop a perfectly upright position in sitting, in walking, and in doing everything?
Okay, so you've been studying for a little bit now, Rachel, and we just had a little bit of talk about a certain teaching of the Buddha. Let me ask you, is it possible for the body to be in exactly the same position all the time, either during meditation or outside of meditation?
Impossible.
It's impossible, right? So because of the universal truth of impermanence, it's not possible to meditate in exactly the same position. That's why every single person is going to meditate differently in terms of a position, because of the universal truth of impermanence, that it's not possible for us all to be in exactly the same position, or for your body to be in exactly the same position. So you can let that go. You don't need to have any kind of craving for the body to be in exactly the same position all the time. Instead, what you do is you would like to have the sternum up and the shoulders back and sit upright. But sometimes you're a little bit back, sometimes you're a little bit forward. This is all completely normal. So as long as you feel comfortable and you can train your mind focusing on the breath, that's what you would like to do.
When I put my sternum up or open my sternum, it's kind of like an upright position for me, and it requires some strength for me to stay or to support my body to stay in this position.
Yeah, sometimes what people like to do is lean slightly back, like up against a wall or on the back of a chair, in order to help the muscles in the upper body to get a little bit more support, a little bit more stability. And if you're not used to sitting on the floor or sitting upright, you can train your body to have a little bit more muscular strength in that situation. You're just not interested in being completely collapsed, because that's going to be hard for the lungs to breathe. You would like to be upright with your sternum up and your shoulders back. And if you need some extra strength to do that, and you need to do a little bit of training of the body, then go for it. But just don't crave for the body being in exactly the same position all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Any other questions here at the temple or anybody online? You have a question, Leo?
Yeah, I might know it, but would like to ask, because yesterday, after eating my dinner, I think it was, I also eat some sweet stuff on the street, and then I thought, now would be a smoothie would be nice, because a long time I didn't have a smoothie. Would be then the right moment to say, wait, Leo, do it tomorrow, or would that be a good way to let it go?
I didn't hear that last part. You said, would that be a good time?
Yeah, I thought about, wouldn't be now a good time to not do it? Don't buy this movie.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, where the mind's longing, yearning for something, you developing your mindfulness or awareness of mind, you should be able to see that. Because what the mind's going to be doing is it's going to be pulling towards something. It's going to be longing, yearning, and pulling towards this thing, wanting this thing. So the more you develop your mindfulness, you'll be able to see clearly that there's a certain attachment in the mind or not. But in situations where you're not quite sure, because your mindfulness maybe isn't fully developed, you can test the mind and you can try to see if it's actually attached to the smoothie or not. And the way that you do that is, if you see your mind's like, hey, I want to buy that smoothie, then you can be like, all right, I'm not going to buy it. You don't buy it, and then you observe the mind. You observe, is it angry? Is it frustrated? Is it agitated? Is it annoyed? Does it have any discontentedness whatsoever? Because if there's any discontentedness whatsoever, then there's an attachment. And that doesn't mean you'll never ever buy a smoothie, but you're going to need to go through a period of time where you introduce this impermanence into your life, where sometimes the mind wants a smoothie and you don't buy it. And then you train your mind that, hey, sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you don't. And then the more that you can see that you don't get a smoothie and your mind's peaceful and joyful and it's just fine and there's no discontentedness, then you know your mind's not attached to it. So then you can just freely purchase these things without any kind of need to test your mind. But you're going to need to put the mind in that situation occasionally with certain things like a smoothie or a piece of chocolate cake or carrot cake or cheesecake or, different foods, because the food isn't the problem. The smoothie isn't the problem. The problem is the discontentedness. The discontent feelings is the problem. The cause of that problem is the craving, desire, attachment. So you're trying to uncover, is there a craving to this particular thing? And if there is, you can train your mind through breathing mindfulness meditation and all the other steps on the Eightfold Path to eliminate it. And then in certain situations, you're going to need to put the mind in that situation so that it can be tested and challenged to see if there's a craving there or not.
I guess that there is some kind of craving, attachment, maybe not so strong for this movie, but of course I'm not enlightened and so on. So there are a lot of things I would like to do, but that would mean that a lot of things I put aside. So I only drink water, would it be like this, or? But also you say gradually, so don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think that your mind, if you've observed that your mind's attached to smoothies or anything else like this, you would like to go a period of time without it. This is called distancing the mind from the object. You need to distance the mind from the object and train it to let go of this craving. So you might need to go a few months without a smoothie in order to train your mind to let it go. But then ultimately you'll be able to have smoothies again because your mind has let it go. So if you continue to just get the smoothies and you don't do what I'm describing, then you'll get frustrated and agitated or annoyed because sometimes you're going to try to get a smoothie and they're like, hey, our electric's broken, or we don't have the fruit, or our ice is out, we can't make you a smoothie. And now you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You're not going to always be able to get a smoothie when you want a smoothie because they are impermanent. So if you allow this craving to continue in the mind, you'll continue to experience frustration, agitation over and over and over again. So you would like to go a period of time where you distance your mind from the object, allowing the mind to be trained to let it go. And then ultimately, when you see your mind has let it go, you can come back and you can start maybe purchasing that again. And then when you're doing that, every once in a while, you would like to not purchase it and just test the mind again, just to make sure it's fully eliminated. I don't know, have you heard my example of this when I talk about my phone, the time when I realized that I had fear? Have you heard this? I can explain it if you like. Okay, so one time I left my home without my phone by accident, and I was driving down the street and I reached for my mobile phone and I noticed I didn't have my mobile phone with me, and this fear arose in the mind. And the first thing that the mind wanted to do was turn around and go get the mobile phone, because that's what the craving, desire, attachment is. It's going to want this phone to be permanent, and the mind thinks the way to solve this problem is go get the phone. But you can't solve your problem by continuing to feed your craving. So realizing this at the stoplight, rather than make a U-turn and go back to my house and get the phone, I decided to put my mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in, which is be outside without the phone, right? So instead of just going out for an hour and a half, I was only supposed to be outside for an hour and a half for a couple of things I needed to do. I decided to extend my time outside. I went to the movies, I went to go get some food, I went to do a whole bunch of things. I was outside for like 5.5, 6 hours. And then when I came home, I didn't just run to the phone to see who messaged me and what happened when I was gone. I just went about my activity at home, doing the things I needed to do. And then at some point I picked up my phone and I started using it again, right? And then knowing that my mind was like this, I waited 2 or 3 or 4 days and then I did it again. I intentionally left the phone at home. And I noticed there wasn't any fear, but there was some uncomfortableness because the craving was still there. When there's discontentedness, even the slightest uncomfortableness in your mind, there's a craving there. So there was some uncomfortableness. So again, I went outside without the phone. So I did this like 2, 3, 4 times where I intentionally left the phone at home and went outside and trained my mind to be without it. That this phone is impermanent, that it can't be with you permanently. So then about 2 months later, I was using the phone, every day we were going out. I figured that this craving was gone, but I didn't know. So about 2 months later, I accidentally left the phone at home again. And when I went outside, I reached for it and I was like, oh, it's not there. Okay, no big deal. And I just kept going. There was no fear. There was no uncomfortableness. There was no nothing. And I could see that the mind had eliminated this craving. And then about a year later, I actually ended up dropping the phone and the screen broke. It just crashed and shattered. And I was like, look at that. The phone broke. Of course, because it's impermanent, right? So you can see in situations where you would have normally got angry or frustrated, you can see that, the mind's let this craving go. So you're going to need to put the mind in the situation where it distances itself from these objects and things that aren't causing harm, like a mobile phone, a computer, foods, things like this. You can ultimately be able to come back and start using these things again, but you do that now without craving, desire, attachment. There are some things that you're not going to be interested in ever coming back to, like if you were addicted to cocaine or heroin or things like this, unwholesome things that are causing harm to your own mind or to somebody else, you're not ever going to go back to doing those things again. But something like a computer or a phone or foods, you can easily go back to these things once you've trained your mind to let go of the craving that it's inside the mind. And now you can do it more peacefully, because when your computer doesn't function exactly the way you'd like it to function, or your phone doesn't function that particular way, you can be at ease. But as long as you're craving for this phone to function a certain way perfectly, or the computer to function a certain way permanently, you'll be discontent and frustrated when it's not functioning that way. So you're going to need to train your mind to let it go by distancing yourself from it, and then ultimately training the mind to let it go. Let go of the craving inside the mind. You don't have to let go of the object itself, but you do have to distance yourself from it for a period of time, like I did with the phone. And then ultimately, when your mind is let go of the craving, you'll be able to use these things again, or have your smoothie again, and your mind will be completely content whether you have it or whether you don't have it. Right now, if there's a craving, you can only be happy if you get the smoothie. But if you can train your mind to not have it for an extended period of time, then you can train your mind to be happy whether you have it or whether you don't have it. Because of impermanence, you're not going to permanently be able to have these things. So that's what you're trying to accomplish with each one of these individual cravings. And you've got your breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity and all the other steps on the Eightfold Path to be able to help you to let go.
You said that if the mind is enlightened, all the cause and conditions are deleted. Is it, for example, I do it many months and then I take a new smoothie, and after a while I also put it aside, this movie, and I deleted the craving, but I'm not enlightened. So could it come back? Could I, for example, then 1 month I every day take a smoothie and the craving comes back? Because, what do you think about that?
If you have fully eliminated the craving, it's not going to arise again because it's completely eliminated. The Buddha describes this as cutting it off at like a palm stump. I don't know if you know what a palm stump is. If you ever see a palm tree and you cut it off, it's like there's nothing left, essentially. Or the other way he describes it is that you eliminate it so that it's no longer subject to future arising. So if you've eliminated it, it's gone. It won't ever come back. So when we talk about it coming back, it was never eliminated to begin with. That's why it will come back, but it wasn't eliminated in that situation. If you fully eliminated it, it won't ever come back, even if you use that object again. So that's why I put my mind in that situation with the phone like 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I intentionally did that to make sure it's like wringing out a rag, getting every last little drop of water out of the rag. You'd like to cut this off so that it's no longer subject to future arising. And then 2 months later, when I accidentally left the phone at home again, I could see that the craving wasn't there and that it had been eliminated. And then when the phone dropped and the screen had cracked and it broke, I could see that there was no craving there too. So once the craving is eliminated, it will never come back ever again.
So, for example, what would be the reason to, if I deleted it completely? I know that you sometimes also take a smoothie. Why I should then do that? Also buy a smoothie to learn about the taste, or because I know that people who don't have the craving, for example, I think you don't have a craving of a smoothie, but you also buy it sometimes. Mm-hmm. What is the reason then for you?
So the reason of putting things into the body is to nourish the body, right? So you would like to nourish the body. And when we put liquid into the body, it's going to hydrate the body. So 99.9% of the time, I'm typically drinking water, but occasionally you'll see me drink a smoothie or soy milk or these other things because it's nice to have some variety. You're not going to permanently drink water, right? It's not permanent. So you use these other things because they provide you other nutritions, other flavors, not because you're longing and yearning for it, because it's just enjoyable. And you can enjoy something without being attached to it. Mm-hmm. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, let's see if you have any other questions here. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So, you have a question? Yes, ma'am. You can get any mic here. Leo has one that we know is working, so maybe you get that one.
Hi, David.
Hello.
And my question is how to balance living now and planning for the future. Because when we plan for the future, I always want to know what the next step is. And we think a lot of details, and which cause we don't enjoy the moment we're living right now.
Sure. It's important that as you're thinking about the future and you're planning the future, that you don't get attached to whatever you're planning. Sometimes what happens is we make a plan and we absolutely want that thing to happen. And if it doesn't happen that way, you're frustrated and you're agitated. So whenever you're making a plan, you should already be inserting into your mind that this may or may not even happen. That if your mind craves it, if you cling to it, then you're going to get disappointed or frustrated or agitated when it doesn't happen. I'll give you an example from my life. That about 2 years ago, there were some students in America that asked me to come teach a retreat in America. And they said, hey, we're going to do all the planning, we're going to do the fundraising, and you know, we're going to support you to come to America and share the teachings of the Buddha. And I was like, all right, sweet. I'll be there. You know, you guys do everything. Let me know what help you need, and we'll make this thing happen. And it was about 10 months before, and they were doing all the planning and all this kind of stuff. But all the while in my mind, I was like, this may or may not even happen, right? I wasn't excited to go. I wasn't wanting to go. I needed to go because people were asking me, but I didn't have this longing, yearning to go. So therefore, we got about 2 months, 2.5 months before the event, and they were like, hey, I mentioned to them, I said, hey, it looks like the event isn't really coming together in the way that it was initially thought about, and you guys are either going to need to decide to cancel it and let it go, or you're going to need to put in some extra effort and make it happen. And they said, well, what do you recommend? And I said, well, based on the amount of time frame that you guys have left and where you are with your support, I suggest that you cancel it and we'll have it another time. And they said, okay, you know, that's what they decided they would like to do. But there was I wasn't upset, I wasn't frustrated, I wasn't disappointed, I wasn't annoyed, because all the way from the very beginning, I already knew that it may or may not even occur. In fact, the people who were doing the planning, when we were first talking about it, 10 months before, I said, by the way, we can do all this planning and we can do all this work, but just understand it may or may not happen. I said, even when I'm getting off the plane and walking down the jetway at your city, who knows, I might trip and sprain my ankle and break my knee, and I might not even be able to come to the retreat. You don't even know what kind of impermanence we're going to experience on the way, right? Or we might get in a car accident from the airport to the retreat. Who knows? So don't ever convince yourself that something's going to absolutely happen, and just gradually make your way towards that. So for those 8 months or so that they were planning it, we were gradually making wise decisions that could have potentially led to having this event, but it just didn't work that way. So you're going to need to do the same thing with any part of your personal life or your professional life, that you gradually work towards certain goals. And sometimes you're going to fall short of those goals. And that's okay, because maybe you were focused on other things, or maybe the timeline was too aggressive. So if you got to 60 or 80% of your goal, wonderful. You got 60 or 80% of your goal met. Now just change your timeline or change your goal. And now, if you don't have craving or clinging, you won't be upset. But you need to train your mind from the very beginning when you're doing your goal setting to not crave and cling to this particular goal as it's absolutely going to happen. And I can only be happy if it happens this way. That's the way to protect your mind, is don't cling to it and just gradually work towards it as a goal, objective, or interest.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Another one? Yeah.
I want to follow up about the future plan, because I just graduated and I just got my master's degree, and I was planning on going to PhD, and I have a really specific goal of what I want to do in the future, what I want to achieve in my life. But this period of time, a part of me wanted to really get focused and get my job done and to go get that PhD, and other part of me just want to relax and enjoy life for 2-3 years. So how should I choose, or how do I make this decision?
That's where you just got to look inward and see, and decide for yourself. The right decision is whichever decision you make. You have to decide, is now the right time for me, or is it not? Would I like to rest? Maybe if you've been going to school for the last 6 or 8 years or so, maybe you need some rest, and maybe that will make you better with the PhD. Or maybe you feel like now you're a little bit younger, and maybe now your mind will be have more vigor and more enthusiasm to do the PhD now. This is something you need to look inward at, and someone can't tell you whether you should get your PhD now or you should delay it. This is a decision that you need to make based on the variables that you see. And there's no right or wrong answer. The right answer is whatever decision that you make. That's going to be the right answer.
Because I think I will choose the easy way, which is relax, but will be wrong to choose to lay back and just relax.
Honestly, I think in the world, there's probably too much go, right? That's the craving, desire, attachment.
That's why it makes me
So
reactive.
if you feel like you need a break, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just taking a break. The challenge is that if you have people around you putting their expectations on you, you might bend to their expectations, like maybe parents or siblings or other people. So be aware of that people around you might try to put their expectations on you of what they expect you to do, but you need to make your own decisions of what you feel comfortable with. You're living your own life. Other people aren't living your life, and they don't know what's going on in your mind. So if mom or dad or others are trying to put their expectations on you, you have to decide what's best for you. And only you can make those decisions. Other people don't have the full insight of what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your life, and only you can make those decisions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, Rachel, you have another question? Go ahead, ma'am.
I just sort of another situation that is, I find myself usually uncomfortable speaking or asking questions in a small group like this. But if it is a big group like 40 or 50 people or hundreds, I find myself, I didn't have the courage to ask questions, and I miss the chance to ask a question, even if I have a question. Like last night, I attended a lecture, and there were 300 people in the meeting room, and I had a question, but I didn't dare to open my camera or turn on my audio and speak directly to the speaker. So I text my question in the chat box. But then, because the meeting room was for a limited time, so there were many questions in the chat box. So finally, the speaker didn't have a chance to see my question and answer my question. And it's this kind of situation happens, time to time,
So because of what you've learned about, which is called personal existence view, the mind's going to feel shy, or it's going to feel hesitant to be vocal in a public setting, because the mind is clinging to a certain self-image or a certain self-identity, and the mind doesn't want to be perceived in a certain way. This is why, when I first asked questions, everyone was like, I don't want to ask my question. And then we got Steve that speaks up and says, I got a question, right? And he breaks the ice, and now all of a sudden everybody's asking questions, right? So the mind is clinging to a certain perception, and it's wanting to be perceived in the world by others in a certain way. And you're afraid of being judged by other people, where by the time you eliminate this clinging and this craving and wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, you won't have this shyness or this hesitation to ask questions. So what you need to do is the breathing mindfulness meditation, the generosity, all those steps on the Eightfold Path that you've learned. But then you need to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be on. Like I was just talking about with Leo, is that you need to put the mind in this situation. So in situations where you have a question and your mind's hesitant or shy to ask the question, you need to push that forward. You need to move it forward and go ahead and ask your question, because each time that you do that in a large group where the mind's hesitant or shy, it'll get easier and easier for you to do that. What the mind thinks that's going to solve this problem is to push it away. Like, I'm not going to ask my question. This is aversion. You're pushing the situation or you're pushing the person away, and the mind thinks that that's going to solve the problem. But instead, what solves the problem is putting your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. And more, as you let go of those craving and clinging, the mind won't be shy. It won't feel uncomfortable. There won't be discomfort or displeasure because the mind's gotten used to this experience. But because of the impermanence, the mind doesn't like it, right? It's having this craving, this desire, it's craving permanence. And now when you put the mind in that situation, it's going to feel uncomfortable a few times. Like when I had the phone and I went outside without it, it felt uncomfortable for a while. But then ultimately you get to the point where the mind's let go of the craving and now you've solved it. So in these situations, I suggest you put your mind in that situation, ask questions, and then more and more the mind will let go of its craving and clinging, and you'll be comfortable to be able to ask those questions. And then also, if you look at Volume 1, Chapter 16, you're going to need to learn more about personal existence view and do those proactive things that I teach you there in order to help you eliminate this pollution of personal existence view.
A follow-up that is still related to the situation last night. Last night, I think I think I would be okay to to just turn on my audio and speak to the speaker, but because I find if I just turn on my audio and then not turning on my camera, it would be implied because in the meeting room only the speaker and the staff were turning on their camera, and the other group. The other people, they didn't turn on their camera and they didn't turn on their audio. So I thought if I just want to ask the question, I should turn on my camera to show respect or to show my politeness to the speaker. But because they were recording the program, so it means other people would be able to see this class in the future. So I think I was in a conflict, either to ask the question by just speaking or by turning on my camera. I was in the conflict.
Yeah, so in the enlightened mind, your mind wouldn't have any discontentedness either way. So if you're noticing that turning on the camera, the mind is uncomfortable with that, then turn it on and train your mind to be comfortable with that there's nothing to cling to and hold on here. If the mind doesn't like to turn on the audio and it's uncomfortable with that, you should do that in order to train your mind to let go of the craving and clinging. And that's where ultimately you'll be able to let that go. And then you'll be able to experience the liberation and the peace and the freedom from those strong feelings. Okay.
I think it's related to the sense of security.
The insecurity is the problem. That's the symptom. But the cause of it is craving. The mind is craving. It's holding on to this personal existence view, and that's what's causing that problem to arise. So don't get confused and think that the insecurity is the cause. That's just the symptom. That's just the problem. But the cause of it is the craving and the clinging. And that's why putting your mind in that situation will train your mind to let go of the craving. And ultimately, you'll get free of that insecurity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm just going to look one more time and see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So I'm just going to end by thanking all of you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. We have events coming up in the future. This Friday, we have a social event here at the temple at 6 p.m. It's called Temple Game Fun Night, where we come together and students will oftentimes bring some snacks to share, some drinks, and we have board games, and we just sit back, listen to music, play some board games. It's a really nice social event. So if you're interested in coming and meeting some people, this is a great opportunity for you on Friday at 6 o'clock. On Saturday, we have our Pali Canon and English study group at 9 a.m. Here at the temple. And then at 1 p.m. on Saturday, I'm teaching a 3-hour course, which is the introduction to the path to enlightenment. This is where you're going to be introduced into the teachings of the Buddha. Then on Sunday at 9 a.m., we have the group learning program where I'm going to be in chapter 11. Chapter 11 is titled Meditation, Developing Your Practice. This is where I'm going to teach you the 4 different types of meditations that the Buddha taught. I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs about these meditations, what the goal is, what you're looking to eliminate, and what you're looking to cultivate in the mind, and how to actually perform these meditations, because this is part of the training that you're going to need in order to make your way to enlightenment. And then on Monday, we have a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. It's a 5-day course from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., where we take an hour-and-a-half lunch break. And over the course of 5 days, I help you develop all the foundational teachings that you need in order to develop your understanding of the path to enlightenment. So you're welcome to join any and all of these, either here at the temple or through our live stream. So thank you again for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.